Hey guys, welcome to another movie review. Today I'm going to be talking about the new DC comic film Aquaman. This is the first time we've ever seen Aquaman in a feature-length film. Um, the Aquaman characters obviously appeared on things like Super Friends, Justice League. He's teamed up with other DC comic heroes in the past in the form of comics, in the form of TV shows, and even in the form of animated movies, but never in a feature length live action film. This is the first time that that's ever happened with DC and Warner Brothers. But in this film, you guys, it does take place after the events of Justice League, and where we're kind of at with the Aquaman character at this point is he's finding out that his brother Orm, or Ocean Master as he's also referred to as in this movie, um, is trying to become the king of the ocean while he's already the king of Atlantis. And how this can become problematic is there's a big war that's going on between the land and the sea, and it's very violent. The sea's very mad that the land is polluting the water and hurting the animals and killing the animals, and taking all the fish and using it for food on land. And the land's mad because now the ocean's trying to strike back for these things, and they want to still have resources themselves, and so they really don't know what's going on in the water. So they're kind of mad now because their resources are not being as allowed as they once were. And so there's this big battle between the land and sea going on. And so Orm, the Ocean Master, or just Ocean Master, I guess is what he's called mostly in this movie. He really wants to kind of push for more battles, be more less merciful with the whole thing, really kind of let the land have this, and really get violent with them. And so Aquaman and some other people of Atlantis are really trying to make sure this doesn't happen, because if this does happen, if he really is becoming the king of the ocean, he'll have the power to do all that. And if he gets the right trident, which is something that Aquaman carries himself already, that can also become problematic because that would give him more power to do all that, which could really make the creatures of the ocean and of Atlantis really kind of a bad enemy and victim to whatever's going on in land and what they end up doing to the ocean and things like that. So, throughout the course of this movie, Aquaman is trying to make sure that Orm does not get the power to become king of the ocean, that he really just kind of just stays as king of Atlantis. And even if they could get him to step down from that power because he has so much power already and he's not using it in the right way, Aquaman and others such as Mera, his girlfriend, and Vulko, his personal trainer and mentor, are also kind of in on that too, to make sure that Orm doesn't really make sure that they give Atlantis a bad name, and that the creatures of the ocean can kind of stay the way they were before this big war happened. So overall, guys, I thought Aquaman was okay. I've been kind of having an on and off fan relationship with DC, I guess. Obviously, I'm a huge fan of the Batman trilogy that Christopher Nolan did all those years back. Batman Begins, The Dark Knight, The Dark Knight Rises. I've liked most of the Superman films. Probably the first two Christopher Reeve ones, Man of Steel, and Justice League for now. I guess we could say that safely. And obviously, I loved Wonder Woman when that came out. So obviously, with DC, I'm one of those people where there's things that I've liked along the way, and there's things along the way that I really didn't care for. I really didn't care for Batman versus Superman. I didn't really care for the small cameo that they gave Aquaman in that one. Um, Suicide Squad was good, but I feel like people are kind of already forgetting about it and stuff like that. So, Aquaman, I kind of went into this one kind of expecting anything, just because we've had some really good films from DC, and we've had some really, really bad ones. So it's been kind of one of those things where do I kind of stand on this kind of thing? And it turns out I'm kind of right in the middle with it, kind of where I've been at with DC for a while, so kind of right in the middle. I think it's an okay film. There's things about this film that I really enjoyed, and there's things about this film that I really didn't enjoy. So it's one of those kind of films where there's, for every good thing I can say about it, there's every bad thing I can say about it too. So let's go over some positives and negatives as to why I feel that way about Aquaman. First and foremost, one thing I have to give this film praise for that I really liked was the visuals. This film is very visually beautiful. Anytime we're in Atlantis, anytime where the film really wants to make sure that you have a visually beautiful film in front of you, I think the film succeeds. The visual effects are very good in this film. It's a very nice looking film. I felt very intrigued by the visuals the whole movie, so visually, I thought the film was very successful. I also thought Jason Momoa's charisma as Aquaman was very likable. In Justice League, I thought he was kind of not so likable in that movie. So I kind of liked how in this film they kind of took an opposite approach where if you were like me, if you really didn't care for the personality that Aquaman had in Justice League, they give him more of a likable presence in this film. They really do make him the hero in this. They really do make sure that you kind of like him and that you like this journey that he goes on and really what he's trying to do for Atlantis. So I like the charisma that Jason Momoa brought to the Aquaman character, and as a result, I think he's a very appropriate choice to play this character now too. There was also some unique narrative choices in this film. One good example of this is when they're trying to show you the past of when Aquaman got training from Vulko, because we really haven't gotten any exposure from Vulko yet in this new DC universe. Um, they would show like a place that he was at when he was younger that he's currently at in the movie, and they would kind of go back and forth of this is what Vulko trained him to do that. This is how Vulko, trained in the battle, and now here we go, kind of him about to go into a battle using those things that Vulko trained with him all those years ago. So I thought there was some unique narrative choices like that that really helped move the movie forward while also kind of making sure all that information is told to you in a very unique and appropriate way. I also liked how the film really tried to bring Atlantis into the real world. What if Atlantis really existed? What would it be like? How would people treat it? What would the theories be? What would scientists be looking for if such thing existed? So I really liked how they brought that into it. They just didn't throw Atlantis in there. It really did kind of have a way to fit into this movie. Um, it really did. Like I said, like if there's scientists talking on television, or if there's fishermen out in the sea, or there's people lost at sea and stuff like that, they really kind of show how Atlantis kind of plays a role in that, and who would kind of help others, who wouldn't help others, who would be more violent about certain things. So I liked how they worked in Atlantis into this movie and how that would work into the real world if the DC universe were to exist. I also like the love story of Aquaman's parents, kind of how they met, how Aquaman came to be, how he got born, how, the world between land and sea kind of got a little closer with each other. It wasn't just ocean people and land people with land people. There really was kind of this struggle at one point, and so how that kind of got resolved and how Aquaman got born. So I really liked the love story between Aquaman's parents. I thought it really was kind of sweet and tender, the whole thing. I also like the use of setting in this film. So when you're in Atlantis in this film, you are in Atlantis, and I really like how they kind of embrace that, really put you in there, really make sure that you're in Atlantis. Or if you're in the desert with Aquaman and his girlfriend Mera, you are in the desert with them. So I really like how the film does have a very good sense of setting for the movie. For my negatives of Aquaman, I thought a lot of the villains in this film were very over the top. Patrick Wilson, who I normally like in a lot of things, and who's worked with James Wan in the past. James Wan directed this film, for those who didn't know. He also worked on like The Conjuring and Insidious, so kind of a different kind of film for him. This isn't a horror film, but Patrick Wilson and him have worked together in the past. But unfortunately, Patrick Wilson plays a villain in this film that's very over the top, very cheesy. It's kind of cliche with his motivations. Definitely kind of has a Thor and Loki brotherhood relationship kind of thing. It felt kind of just lackluster to me. It really didn't feel like anything special. Also, the character of Black Manta, who's a very significant villain in the film, very over the top. They even kind of bring up his villainous name in a kind of a cheesy way. I thought the villains were a little over the top in this one. I thought they were kind of just too out there, too cheesy. Felt like kind of like a Power Rangers episode villain kind of thing. A little too over the top for me for those. I also thought some of the humor in this film was kind of weak. There's a scene where you think Aquaman's going to be facing against a gang in a bar, and it turns out they just want to take some selfies with him. So kind of a weak joke, I thought. Kind of a anyone, anywhere kind of a joke that could have been thrown into anything kind of a thing. So I don't know. I thought the humor in that was a little weak, and a lot of the humor throughout the film was kind of weak in general too. Also, this film has a very silly cartoon, Saturday morning cartoon kind of vibe to it. And though I appreciate the idea that James Wan didn't make another dark DC film to avoid Batman versus Superman, I think there's another way you could have done it without making the silly, over the top 80s cartoon kind of vibe. It really did kind of feel silly, and I don't know. The vibe they went for with this movie I thought was just a little too silly for its own good. I also thought the first person action shots that they sometimes use in this film, I think there's one involving Nicole Kidman, one involving Aquaman grabbing a gun from somebody. Um, they felt kind of very like they felt like something out of a video game, and they don't necessarily feel like they belong in an Aquaman movie. So I thought some of those first person action shots really could have been taken out of the film and hopefully replaced with something better. I felt like they didn't really belong in this movie. I also thought the script overall was kind of unfocused. There's a lot of chunks where it'll focus on Black Manta, and then it'll focus on a large chunk of Aquaman again. Then it'll focus on a large chunk of Ocean Master. Then it'll focus on a large chunk of Mera, the girlfriend. So I thought there was a lot of script choices where it could have just been more focused. It didn't have to jump around so much. I would have preferred a more focused script for Aquaman. There's also tons of CGI in this film, and to make this kind of film work, I understand you need CGI, but there's just so many shots in this film where it's clearly a computer generated image placed on somebody's face, and that's used for like a helmet for battle. Or Dolph Lundgren, for example, has a role in this movie. He plays Mera's dad, and some of the helmets they put on him just look really silly. I don't know. Some of the uses of CGI I thought were just way too silly. Going back to the silly cartoon vibe again, I thought that the use of CGI was just a little too overboard in this movie. I'm going to give Aquaman a 7.5 out of 10, though. I think it's an okay film. There's things about it that I really like, but there's things like over-the-top villains, weak humor, a silly cartoon vibe. The first-person action shots I thought were really kind of unnecessary. The script felt a little unfocused to me, and there was too many uses of CGI. But overall, there's things I like about Aquaman, but there's a lot of things about that I didn't really care for. So I think it's okay. I think a Redbox rental is more than fine with this one. I don't know if I can send you out to the theater to see this one, but Redbox rental is more than fine for a movie like this. So 7.5 out of 10. Aquaman is an okay film.